William Avery Bishop wasn't just any pilot. He was the pilot. 72 enemy aircraft shot down in verified combat, the highest score in the entire British Empire, more than any other Canadian, more than most complete squadrons. At 24 years old, Bishop commanded No. 85 Squadron of the Royal Air Force. He'd survived 3 years of aerial combat when the average lifespan of a pilot was measured in weeks, not months. He'd faced off against Germany's best pilots in their Fokker triplanes and Albatross fighters. He'd taken down observation balloons protected by anti-aircraft artillery. He'd come out victorious from engagements where the odds were stacked completely against him. The Victoria Cross hung from his chest, the British Empire's highest decoration for valor, awarded for a solo raid against a German aerodrome where he destroyed 3 aircraft on the ground and shot down 2 more during his escape. He also had the Distinguished Service Order with an additional bar, the Military Cross, the Distinguished Flying Cross. The pilots who flew with him described him as aggressive to the point of recklessness, but brilliant in his tactics, ice cold under fire, able to calculate firing angles and relative velocities while dodging tracer rounds at 200 kilometers per hour, an exceptional marksman who wasted few rounds. By September 1918, Bishop had seen absolutely everything in the sky, every type of German aircraft, every maneuver, every trick the Kaiser's pilots could pull off. He knew the capabilities of every aircraft flying over the Western Front, speed limits, rates of climb, turning radii, maximum altitudes. At that point in the war, the 100 Days Offensive was in its 8th week. Canadian forces under General Arthur Currie had broken through the Hindenburg Line just days earlier, the defensive line the Germans considered impenetrable. The Second German Army was in full retreat across a 30-kilometer front. Victory was close. Everyone knew it. After 4 years of trench warfare, of battles like the Somme and in Verdun that had devoured millions of lives, the conflict was finally reaching its end. Soldiers who'd survived since 1914 could allow themselves to think about going home, about surviving the last few weeks. The Cambrai sector in northern France was one of the key points of the final offensive. Canadian troops were advancing against increasingly weakened German positions. Allied air superiority was almost total. German squadrons, decimated by 3 years of attrition, could barely maintain defensive patrols. September 27, 1918, dawned with clear skies over Cambrai, unlimited visibility, wind from the west at 25 kilometers per hour, perfect conditions for air operations, an ideal day for hunting. Bishop took off at 1400 hours, leading a patrol of 4 aircraft. He was flying a Nieuport 27, a French biplane fighter equipped with 2 synchronized Vickers machine guns that fired through the propeller arc. Maximum speed of 180 kilometers per hour, operational ceiling of 6,000 meters, range of 2.5 hours. The mission was routine: offensive patrol over German lines, intercept any enemy air activity, provide cover for Canadian troops advancing on the ground. At 14:15 hours, everything changed. But what Bishop was about to witness that afternoon would challenge every principle of aeronautics he knew, every combat experience he'd accumulated, every certainty about what could exist in the skies of 1918. Bishop was flying at 3,600 meters above German positions northeast of Cambrai when something caught his attention in his peripheral vision. A metallic flash high above him, floating completely motionless against the blue sky. It wasn't an aircraft. Aircraft don't float. They can't. The fundamental physics of flight prevent it. An aircraft must maintain forward speed or it falls. Even the slowest bombers need constant movement. But this object was suspended in the air as if gravity didn't exist. It wasn't an observation balloon. Captive balloons were tethered to the ground with visible cables. This object had no cable. It didn't show the characteristic shape of a gas-filled balloon. And balloons didn't remain perfectly stable in 25 kilometers per hour winds. They swayed, oscillated, moved with air currents. This object remained absolutely motionless. Bishop signaled his formation to hold position and began climbing toward the object. His Clairget rotary engine roared at maximum power as he gained altitude. 1,000 meters, 2,000, 3,000. The air grew thinner, colder. At 4,500 meters, he was close to his Newport's operational ceiling. The object was still floating 800 meters above him. Lieutenant James Morrison, flying as Bishop's wingman, confirmed visual contact. His Newport maintained formation 300 meters to the right. Morrison was an experienced pilot. He'd flown 16 successful combat missions with Bishop. He wasn't prone to hallucinations or panic. Both pilots were seeing exactly the same thing. Bishop continued climbing. At 4,800 meters, he managed to position himself approximately 600 meters below and behind the object. From that distance, he could observe it clearly through his telescopic sight. The shape was cylindrical, approximately 12 meters long, 2.5 meters in diameter, Bishop estimated by comparing it to his own aircraft's wingspan. Metallic surface, dull gray, no shine. There were no visible markings, no insignia, no identification numbers, no characteristics indicating nationality, and crucially, no aerodynamic features. No wings. Aircraft need wings to generate lift. No stabilizers. Aircraft need stabilizers to maintain control. No control surfaces. Aircraft need ailerons, rudders, elevators to maneuver. No propeller. Aircraft need propellers to generate thrust. No visible engine. Aircraft need engines, and those engines made noise, lots of noise. Bishop's Clairget rotary engine produced 130 horsepower and roared so loud that pilots were left partially deaf after each flight. German engines weren't any quieter. The engines of any aircraft in 1918 were audible from kilometers away. This object, suspended less than 600 meters away, emitted no sound whatsoever. Bishop knew every aircraft in service in 1918. British, French, American, German, Italian, even the experimental prototypes that intelligence services kept squadron commanders informed about. He knew German Zeppelins, massive rigid airships that had bombed London. He knew secret projects, futuristic designs that aeronautical engineers were developing. This was none of them. He made a decision. As squadron commander, as a combat pilot with 72 victories, he had authority to investigate any unidentified object in his sector. He maneuvered his Neoport to position himself at attack angle 200 meters behind and slightly below the object. Optimal firing position. He placed the object in his sights, squeezed the triggers. Both Vickers machine guns began firing, 800 rounds per minute per gun. The sound was deafening inside the cockpit. Ejected brass casings bounced against his windscreen. Tracer rounds left lines of red light through the air. He could see the impacts. The tracers struck the object's surface along its entire length. From that distance, at that angle, with his experience as a marksman, Bishop knew he wasn't missing. Every burst connected. But there was no visible effect. The bullets didn't penetrate the hull. They didn't ricochet, leaving impact marks. They didn't generate sparks. They didn't produce any apparent damage. It was as if the object's surface simply absorbed the bullets, as if they disappeared on contact. Bishop stopped firing, closed the distance to 100 meters, opened fire again. Same results. Clear impacts, zero damage. A Neoport 27 carried 1,600 rounds of .303 caliber ammunition, divided between 2 machine guns, 800 rounds per gun, enough ammunition to shoot down multiple enemy aircraft in a single flight.
Bishop, with his skill as a marksman, normally needed less than 100 rounds for a confirmed kill. He emptied both magazines completely, 1,600 rounds fired from distances between 200 and 75 meters. Every tracer round confirmed impact, none produced damage. Then the object moved.
It didn't flee. It didn't fall. It showed no signs of being damaged or in danger. Instead, it began moving around Bishop's aircraft. Not erratically like an enemy pilot trying to escape, not with the evasive maneuvers Bishop had seen 1,000 times in combat. Controlled movement, precise, deliberate. The object began flying in perfect circles around Bishop's Newport, at constant speed, at constant altitude, maintaining exactly 60 meters separation at all times. Bishop counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 complete circles. 7 perfect revolutions around his aircraft while he tried to keep the plane steady, watching something that shouldn't be able to exist. Morrison, watching from 300 meters away, saw the same thing. His report, filed independently 2 hours later, would describe exactly the same sequence: 7 circles, constant separation, impossible movement. But what was about to happen would surpass even that demonstration of impossible capabilities, because after those 7 perfect circles, the object would do something that no aeronautical engineer in 1918 would have believed possible. Hit that subscribe button if you want to understand how a pilot with 72 confirmed victories could empty 1,600 rounds into something without producing any damage whatsoever, because what's coming reveals the most inexplicable part of the encounter.
After the 7th circle, the object stopped. It didn't gradually decelerate like any physical object in motion should. It simply stopped moving. From 190 kilometers per hour to 0 in less than a second, floating directly in front of Bishop's aircraft. 30 meters away, so close that Bishop could observe surface details through his sight. The surface was perfectly smooth. No rivets, no seams, no visible construction panels, no openings, no engine exhaust, no heat distortion. Nothing indicating how this object was staying in the air. Bishop had seen the inside of dozens of wrecked aircraft. He knew aircraft construction. Wooden frames covered with tensioned canvas, control cables, articulated control surfaces, engines mounted in metal structures, fuel tanks, hydraulic systems, all the mechanical pieces necessary for something to fly. This object showed none of that. It remained suspended in front of him for approximately 5 seconds. 5 seconds where Bishop could clearly observe that this wasn't German technology, nor Allied technology, nor technology from any nation on Earth in 1918. Then it ascended. It didn't tilt nose up like an aircraft preparing for a climb. It didn't gain horizontal speed to convert that momentum into vertical ascent. It didn't show any of the maneuvers a pilot would execute. It simply began rising, vertically, as if someone were lifting it with an invisible cable. From 0 to instant vertical ascent. Bishop watched. Morrison watched. Both saw the same thing. The object went from being suspended at 5,000 meters altitude to being at 9,000 meters in approximately 8 seconds. 4,000 meters in 8 seconds. That's equivalent to 30,000 meters per minute rate of climb. The best climbing aircraft on the Western Front in September 1918 was the French Espad-13, rate of climb 300 meters per minute under optimal conditions. The British Sopwith Camel could achieve maybe 350 meters per minute. Even the most advanced prototypes didn't exceed 500 meters per minute. This object had climbed at a rate 60 times higher. At that rate of climb, the object would reach vertical speeds exceeding 1,800 kilometers per hour, faster than the speed of sound, which in 1918 no one had even approached. The G-forces involved in that acceleration would have killed any human pilot. Blood would have drained from the brain. Vision would have reduced to a tunnel before unconsciousness. Internal organs would have suffered damage from the force. But the object ascended smoothly, without hesitation, until it disappeared from sight. Bishop descended to patrol altitude, completed his mission, returned to base. He landed at 16:45 hours, 3 hours after takeoff. He walked directly to the squadron command post and began drafting his combat report. Every pilot who participated in combat had to file a detailed report of what occurred: location, time, altitude, type of enemy aircraft, outcome of engagement. Bishop had filed 72 victory reports. He knew the format. He knew the importance of precision. This report would be the most detailed he would ever file. He described the object with technical specificity, estimated dimensions compared to known reference points, surface and observed characteristics, behavior during the encounter, documented flight capabilities, ammunition expended, corroborating witnesses. He submitted it at 1630 hours to Air Commodore John Salmond, RAF commander in the sector. The report reached Air Intelligence Headquarters before 1800 hours. By 2100 hours, intelligence officers were already at number 85 Squadron's aerodrome.
Major Harold Fowler from the Air Intelligence Section conducted immediate interrogations with all witnesses. Bishop first, then Morrison, then the other 2 pilots from the patrol who had been farther away but had observed part of the incident. The interrogations lasted between 2 and 4 hours per pilot. Fowler asked the same questions multiple times, looking for inconsistencies. He compared testimonies, verified technical details, interrogated as if searching for conventional explanations. He found none. All written materials were confiscated. Bishop's combat report, Morrison's independent report, notations in flight logs, everything documenting the incident was removed from squadron files. The Squadron War Diary, the official record of all operations, should contain a detailed entry for September 27th. War diaries were legal military documents. Omitting information was a serious violation. The entry for September 27, 1918 mentions routine patrols, no unusual contacts, no incidents requiring special attention, as if the encounter had never happened. Bishop filed a formal protest on September 28 regarding the confiscation of operational documents. As squadron commander, he had the right to maintain complete records of his unit's activities. Confiscation of combat reports without written justification violated procedures. His protest appears in administrative files that survived, a sheet of paper where Bishop, in his characteristic handwriting, objects to the removal of critical documents. The official response to his protest doesn't exist. There's no record of any response, as if the protest had disappeared into an administrative void. And then the transfers began. Lieutenant Morrison was transferred to number 56 Squadron, based 40 kilometers to the west on September 29th, 2 days after the encounter. Captain Harold Edwards, flight commander who had observed the object from greater distance, was reassigned to home defense duties in England on October 2nd. Lieutenant Peter Davison, Edwards' wingman, was sent to training command on October 4th. Corporal Thomas Bennett, whose signals unit on the ground had observed the object, saw his entire unit rotated to reserve positions behind the lines on October 1st. The official explanation in each case: operational requirements, personnel needs, routine rotation. The actual effect? Every witness of the incident was scattered to different commands, ensuring they couldn't compare notes, coordinate testimony, or discuss what had occurred among themselves.
And then, 3 weeks before the armistice, when victory was guaranteed and his squadron was in full combat, they pulled the British Empire's most decorated pilot from the front. The official reason made sense on paper, but the timing revealed something completely different. Smash that subscribe button if these immediate transfers are making you uneasy, because the most shocking decision hasn't come yet: what they did to Bishop himself.
William Bishop was withdrawn from frontline combat on October 18, 1918. The official reason: publicity tour to promote Canadian war bond sales. The Empire's greatest ace returning home to inspire the people, raise funds, strengthen the war effort. On paper, it made perfect sense. In reality, the timing was inexplicable. The 100 Days Offensive was in its critical phase. Every day, Allied troops advanced against the last German defenses. Every experienced squadron commander was vital. Allied air superiority, though superior, still required expert leadership. And Bishop wasn't just any commander. He was the RAF's most successful commander. His squadron had the highest victory rate. His presence raised morale, not just for his pilots, but for ground troops who knew Bishop was flying above them. Pulling him out 3 weeks before the armistice, when victory was guaranteed but combat was still intense, made no military sense. Unless the objective wasn't promoting war bonds. Unless the objective was removing him from the theater of operations immediately. Bishop obeyed orders. He departed for Canada. But he didn't stay silent. In public interviews during the Bond tour, in conversations with journalists, in speeches before Canadian audiences, Bishop mentioned the incident, not with specific details, not directly violating classification orders, but he mentioned that pilots at the front were observing inexplicable things, aerial phenomena that defied understanding. Reporters wanted to know more. Bishop declined to elaborate, but he made it clear that something was happening in the skies over France that the public didn't know about. In January 1919, 2 months after the armistice, a Toronto Star journalist asked him directly about reports of unusual sightings. Bishop responded, "I saw things over France that I can't explain with the technology we know. I filed detailed reports. Those reports were classified. I can't say more." The article was never published. The Star's editors received pressure from the British War Ministry. The article was suppressed before printing. Lieutenant James Morrison never spoke publicly about the incident. He didn't get the chance. Morrison, 22 years old, from Toronto, had flown as Bishop's wingman for 4 months, 16 successful combat missions, a competent pilot, careful, reliable. After his transfer to No. 56 Squadron on September 29th, fellow pilots noticed a change in his behavior. He became withdrawn, nervous, constantly vigilant, as if expecting something.
In a letter to his brother, dated October 15, 1918, Morrison wrote, "I witnessed something over France that I can't explain. They've ordered me not to speak of it. Intelligence officers confiscated my flight log. If anything happens to me, know that what I saw that day was real." Major Bishop saw it too. He can corroborate everything. On October 24, 1918, Morrison's SE-5A engine failed over German-controlled territory. He made a forced landing behind enemy lines. He wasn't seen by Allied forces. His body was recovered 3 days later, on October 27th, when Canadian forces advanced through the sector. Medical examination noted injuries consistent with forced landing impact, left leg fracture, multiple contusions, broken ribs. The field doctor, Captain Robert McLeod of the Canadian Army Medical Corps, also noted something else: gunshot wound to the back of the skull, small caliber, close range. The wound's angle was inconsistent with fire from another aircraft, inconsistent with ground fire during landing. The trajectory suggested Morrison was kneeling or lying down when he received the shot.
execution, not combat. Captain McLeod requested formal investigation of the circumstances of death. His request was denied within 24 hours without explanation. McLeod filed a second request, this time directly to the division's chief medical officer. He argued that Morrison's wounds suggested possible war crime that required documentation. The second request was also denied. On November 3, 1918, 8 days before the armistice, Captain McLeod died in a vehicle accident. His truck went off a road in clear weather, impacting a tree. He died instantly. No investigation of the accident was conducted. Morrison's personal effects, including his flight log recovered from the wrecked aircraft, were scheduled to be sent to his family in Toronto. They never arrived. Canadian Expeditionary Force records indicate the effects as lost in transit without further elaboration. The original encounter report filed by Morrison at No. 56th Squadron Headquarters was classified and sealed. It remains classified to this day.
Captain Harold Edwards observed the object from approximately 3,000 meters distance while commanding a separate patrol. He and his wingman, Lieutenant Peter Davison, saw the object execute the circular maneuvers before accelerating vertically. Edwards, 27, from Manchester, England, had 23 confirmed victories, Distinguished Flying Cross, an experienced pilot who'd commanded flights since 1917. His flight log from September 27th described metallic object, high-speed circular maneuvers, altitude approximately 4,500 meters. After his transfer to home defense duties in England, Edwards was stationed at Biggin Hill, south of London. His letters to his fiancée, discovered in family archives in 1987, make oblique reference to the incident. In a letter dated November 8, 1918, he wrote, "The things we witnessed over France defy explanation. They've warned me that discussing certain observations could result in court-martial. The war may be ending, but some secrets will remain buried." On November 23, 1918, 12 days after the armistice, Edwards died in a flying accident at Biggin Hill. His SE-5A entered a spin during a routine training flight and crashed. 3 pilots in the air at the same time reported that Edwards' aircraft appeared to be under control immediately before the spin. No signs of mechanical problems, no indications of emergency maneuvers. The aircraft simply entered a spin and fell. Examination of the wreckage found no mechanical failure. The official investigation determined pilot error, despite Edwards' impeccable record and extensive experience. His personal flight log, which would have contained the September 27th entry, was never returned to his family. RAF records indicate it as destroyed in the accident. The aircraft's logbook survives. His personal flight log doesn't. Corporal Thomas Bennett, 31 years old, from Regina, Saskatchewan, served with the 4th Canadian Signals Unit. His field diary, maintained since 1916, documented daily observations, including artillery fire, aircraft movements, weather conditions. The September 27, 1918 entry described the object in detail. Metallic silver, circular flight pattern, high altitude, definitely not aircraft or balloon. Observed approximately 10 minutes before object departed at impossible speed. Bennett's unit was rotated to reserve positions on October 1st, 4 days after the sighting. He returned to Canada in December 1918 with his division. In January 1919, 2 months after the armistice, Bennett attempted to donate his field diary to the Canadian War Museum. The museum accepted the donation, but returned it 3 weeks later with a letter indicating portions of the diary contain material considered unsuitable for public display.
The September 27th entry had been removed, pages cleanly cut from the binding. Bennett kept the diary the rest of his life. He died in 1953 at age 66. His daughter discovered the diary among his effects. She attempted to donate it to military archives in 1954. The archives accepted it, but classified the remaining portions related to September 1918. Those sections remain classified under Canada's Access to Information Act. Declassification requests filed in 1995, 2004, and 2018 have all been denied. The denials cite national security concerns and potential harm to international relations for an event that occurred over a century ago. But the pattern wasn't limited to direct witnesses. In 1947, a researcher named Martin Hendricks, studying unusual RAF reports from the Great War, located Lieutenant Peter Davidson, now a schoolteacher in Kent. Davidson agreed to meet, but refused to discuss the September 27th encounter specifically. According to Hendricks's notes, Davidson stated, "I saw what Captain Edwards saw. I filed a report. That report was classified. They warned me never to discuss it. I've maintained that silence for 29 years and will continue to do so." 3 days after the interview, Martin Hendricks died in a house fire in London. The fire investigation determined faulty wiring as the cause. All of Hendricks's research materials, including interview notes and RAF documents he had obtained, were destroyed in the fire. Peter Davidson died in 1952 at age 57. His family found a sealed envelope among his possessions, addressed to be opened only after the classification period expires. The envelope contained a 2-page handwritten account of the September 27th encounter. The family attempted to make the account public in 1953. They were contacted by the Air Ministry and informed that publication of the document would violate the Official Secrets Act. The document was surrendered to authorities and hasn't been seen since.
William Bishop survived. He returned to Canada. He became a successful businessman. He served in World War II as Director of Recruiting for the Royal Canadian Air Force. But he never stayed silent about what he saw. In interviews throughout the decades, when asked about his combat experience, Bishop mentioned the Cambrai incident. Not with all the details, not directly violating the classification orders that were still in effect, but he mentioned that he'd seen something inexplicable, that he'd filed a report. That report had been classified. In 1952, in an interview for Maclean's magazine, the journalist asked about unusual sightings during the war. Bishop responded, "In September 1918, I fired 1,600 rounds at something over Cambrai. It was metallic, floated silently, moved in ways no aircraft could replicate. It suffered no damage from my fire. Then it circled me 7 times before disappearing vertically at an impossible speed. I filed a detailed report. That report remains classified to this day." The article was published. It caused some attention in military and aviation circles. The Canadian Department of Defense issued a brief statement. Major Bishop's combat reports from 1918 remain classified for national security reasons. No further comments will be provided. Bishop died in 1956 at age 62. On his deathbed, according to his family, he reiterated the truthfulness of the Cambrai encounter. He said it was the most significant event of his combat career, more significant than his 72 victories, more significant than the Victoria Cross, because it had shown him that the skies of 1918 contained things no one understood.
The Cambrai encounter wasn't an isolated incident. Between August and November 1918, military records contain references to at least 17 similar incidents across multiple fronts. On August 14, 1918, over Amiens during the Allied offensive, Squadron Commander James McCudden reported a cylindrical object, metallic appearance, executed maneuvers impossible for any known aircraft. His report reached the Air Ministry and was immediately classified. But there's a strange inconsistency. Official records show McCudden died in a flying accident on July 9, 1918, 5 weeks before he supposedly filed the August 14th report. How did a dead pilot file a report? The inconsistency was noted by researchers in the 70s. No explanation has ever been provided. On October 4, 1918, over the Argonne Forest, American pilots from the 94th Aero Squadron reported formation of lights moving in coordinated pattern at altitude exceeding 9,000 meters. Distinguished from artillery flares, signal rockets, and all known pyrotechnics by precise geometric formation and sustained altitude. Captain Eddie Rickenbacker, commanding the squadron, filed a report with American Expeditionary Force Intelligence. The report was sent to Washington and classified. Rickenbacker refused to discuss the incident for the rest of his life. He died in 1973, taking with him whatever knowledge he had. The geographical distribution was enormous. The Western Front, the Italian Front, even reports from the Eastern Front before the Russian collapse. The timeline spanned the entire final offensive. The descriptions, despite coming from pilots of different nationalities who couldn't have communicated, showed remarkable consistency. Metallic surfaces, silent operation, impossible maneuvers, impermeability to weapons fire. The original combat report filed by Bishop remains classified in Canadian military archives. Declassification requests under Freedom of Information laws have been repeatedly denied. The justification? National security. For an event that occurred 107 years ago. British archives contain references to the incident in 1918 intelligence documents. Those references are heavily redacted when they've been released. The sections corresponding to the September 27th period have been removed completely. German archives captured after the war include the 234th Division's report on unidentified aerial object on September 27, 1918. Their description matches Allied reports exactly. That document was reclassified by British authorities in 1946 after World War II. It remains sealed. Bishop's encounter over Cambrai is the best documented incident because it involved the Empire's most decorated pilot, a witness who couldn't be easily discredited, a man who insisted on the truthfulness of his testimony until his death. But the suppression patterns are identical in all cases. Immediate classification of reports, separation of witnesses, confiscation of evidence, elimination of official records, and in too many cases, convenient deaths of those who witnessed too much.
On September 27, 1918, over the battlefields of Cambrai, the British Empire's deadliest ace encountered something impossible. Something that absorbed 1,600 rounds without suffering damage. Something that moved with precision no human pilot could match. Something that's been classified for over a century. Major Bishop tried to tell us the truth. He maintained the reality of the encounter until his death in 1956. He insisted what he saw was real, that it defied all conventional explanation. They classified his report. They scattered the witnesses. They eliminated the documentary evidence. And in too many cases, they eliminated those who knew too much. But they couldn't eliminate the truth. September 27, 2025 marks the 107th anniversary of the encounter. For those who recognize the pattern, for those who understand what was witnessed and hidden, the date carries weight. Leave a comment with these exact words, Cambrai 1918. Nothing more, just those two words.
It's a signal to me, to others watching, to the algorithm itself that you understand, that you see what they tried to classify. Don't elaborate, don't add explanation, just the words. Those who know will recognize it. On September 27, 1918, over Cambrai, 72 confirmed victories weren't enough to prepare William Bishop for the truth. The skies of World War I contained more than German and French and English aircraft. They contained something that a century later remains too sensitive to declassify. Remember the date, remember Cambrai, watch the skies, the pattern continues.
Drop a subscription if this video changed your perspective on what was really happening in the skies of World War I, because every week we break down the stories that military institutions classified and never wanted you to know about.